Today's shiur is Nazir Daf Mem Gimel. 15 lines from the top, almost in the middle of the Omid. Before we begin the actual Gemara, we will glance at the side where we have a nosei, a topic heading, which reads as follows: Machlokes Tanoim, a Tanaic disagreement, B'mahu hamokar di'isur tumas meis, maschil mishas moisoi. From where do we know that the defilement and the prohibition of a Kohen or a Nazir to defile to the dead begins at the point of death? One pasuk is lehechalo, another pasuk is b'moisam. We're going to see then a machlokes amoroyim and how they react or how they interpret this machlokes tanoim. As far as Rabbi Yochanan is concerned, there's no halachic difference between the two opinions. It's just where does each one see that point from which pasuk. L'Reish Lakish goiseis iko binayu. According to Reish Lakish, there's a practical halachic difference between the Tanakama and Rebbe. According to one, only at actual full death is there defilement. According to the other, even in the state of gesisa, the throes of death, there is already defilement. In other words, a Kohen or a Nazir would be prohibited to go into the same room as an individual who is experiencing gesisa, the last moments of life. The Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan, Lehechalo. This is taken from the pasuk in Vayikra, Perek Chav Aleph, pasuk Dalid. On the side, we've written the pasuk Lo Yitamo Baal Bi'amov Lehechalo. And this pasuk is in the context of the prohibitions of defilement with regard to Kohanim, and what we say regarding Kohanim will apply equally to Nazir and vice versa. So the Tanakama says Ad Sha'ah Shiyomus. There is no defilement until the point of death. Rebbe Omer, he quotes another pasuk. This is a pasuk in the context of Nazir in Bamidbar Perek Vav pasuk Zayin. Lo yitamu lohem b'moisam, and he darshans ad shiyamus. Tuma is experienced at the point of death. In other words, there is a prohibition upon a Nazir not to defile himself to the dead. My binaya. What is the difference between saying lehechalo ad shiyamus or like Rebbe says lo yitama lehem b'moisam ad shiyamus? It seems to be the same words even as far as the halachic conclusion is concerned. So my binaya, what's the difference between the approach taken by the Tanakama and the approach taken by Rebbe? Amar Rav Yochanan mashmois dorshin ika binayu. Rabbi Yochanan said there is no halachic difference. It's just where do you derive ad shiyamus from? The Tanakama derives it from the pasuk in Vayikra Lehechalo, and Rebbe derives it from the pasuk in Bamidbar. Reish Lakish Omar Goiseis Iko Binayu. Reish Lakish says there is a practical halachic difference between the two opinions. Laman Yomem Lehechalo, according to the Tanakama, Afilu Goiseis, there would be a prohibition of defilement, even if the subject happens to be a goseis and not a total corpse. Goseis meaning in the state of in the throes of death, the last moments of life. Even at that point where the person still has the signs of life to him, but he's in the throes of death, he casts defilement to those in his midst, to those in the same room. B'mosam, the approach taken by Rebbe, the darshans lo yitamalem b'mosam ad shiyomus, in only at the point of actual total death, then there is defilement, goseis lo. But goseis does not impart defilement. Ulamandi Omar, now what the Gemara is going to do is going to evaluate each opinion, and what does he do with the fact that there is the other pasuk. The markings that you see highlight the word hoksiv. You can see that we've highlighted with a crown shape, and the dashed underline will highlight the expression lema kra. The lema kra is part of the response to the questions that are raised. So now we continue. Ulamandi Omar milahe chalo. According to the Tanakama who darshan that pasuk, v'hoksiv b'mosam, and especially if you work within the opinion of Reish Lakish that there's a point of difference. So according to the Manda Omar, the darshan lahe chalo, which according to Reish Lakish meant even a goses is mitame, what do you do with the pasuk that says b'mosam, which would have meant total death? And so the Gemara says miboya le lichida Rebbe. The Tanakama needs the b'mosam for Rebbe's teaching. Ironically, it's we'll say another teaching of Rebbe. The Sanya Rebbe Omer b'mosam eino mitame avo mitame b'nigosam u'b'zivosam. Rebbe says that the Nazir and Kohen are warned against defilement to the dead, but there is no prohibition of a Nazir or a Kohen to experience defilement through contact with a Zav, or in fact other kinds of Nigosam is there, Bezivasam. The Rosh on the fourth line under the Tosfos says Avomitamahu bezivo ubenigoyim imhoya oviv zav o mitzora. The Nazir and Kohen are not warned against exposing themselves to the tumah of his father if he's a zav or he is a mitzora. The only prohibition is death defilement. We continue in the Gemara. Ulamad Omar b'moisam. The opinion that darshan b'mosam to the exclusion of the goses, does he not need it for this point? That the azhora, the warning against defilement, is only with regard to defilement of the dead, not negoyim and ziva. So the Gemara says, basically, you're right. However, in kain lema kra b'mois, if the pasuk was only for exclusion of defilement of dead, it could have said b'mos. My b'mosam, from the fact that the word is expanded into this form, b'mosam shames mina tarti. I can learn both points, namely exclusion of goses, and that the warning against defilement is limited to defilement concerning the dead. According to the approach taken by Rebbe, that darshan b'mosam, which according to Reish Lakish we saw that meant only when actually dead and not in the throes of death, but does the pasuk not say lehei chalo, which would imply that even a goses does impart tumah? So the Gemara says no. Lehei chalo lahachihu da'asa. The lehei chalo word comes to teach me the following: b'mi she'eno mechulal, that there is a warning against the tumah regarding someone who has not yet been defiled. Yotza zeh shemechulav v'omeid. This is in accordance with the sugya that we saw on Daf Map in our previous shiur. Someone who, let us say, was holding a corpse, was attached to a corpse, and he was handed a second corpse and touched the second corpse. There's no prohibition against his touching the second corpse while he's still touching the first corpse. That's called a person that's mechul v'yomid. He's in the midst of tumah. Then there's no additional penalty for him touching a second corpse. So lehei chalo is used to teach me that point. Ulaman diomar mi lehei chalo, according to the approach taken by the Tanakama that said even a goses, ha miboya le lahai svara, does he not need lehei chalo for this point, the point we just made of b'mi she'enu mechulu yotzeh shemechulu v'oimed? So the answer is im kain lema kro lehachel. if the pasuk was needed for only one point, it could have said la'achel, my lahechalo. The fact that the word is expanded into that form, shamas mino tarti, I can learn both points, namely that even a goses is metama, and the exclusion of the penalty of someone who is mechulu v'oimed. Meisvei Adam eino metama eloat shetetze nafsho v'afilu meguyod v'afilu goses. So here we have a Tanaic source that says that there is no tumah, there's no death defilement that's radiated until there's actual departure of soul. Even if the victim happens to be megud, he happens to be cut up, and he's missing limbs, and you could see he's not going to live very long, or he's in the throes of death. According to the opinion that said even a goses is metame, that was Reish Lakish's approach taken above. Well, hakatani de'ena metame. Here we have a Tanaic source that says a goses is not metame. So the Gemara explains le'inyan temuye ad nafke nafshe. In fact, when it comes to the projection of death defilement, then only upon soul departure. However, le'inyan aschuli ha'ischo. However, concerning the other prohibition of lo yechalel, not to profane your sanctity, there even a goses creates that profaning. Slight correction, not lo yechalel, but rather the lav, the negative command of lo yitamo ba'al b'amov lehechalo. That being considered a separate offense, and that is violated when exposed to a goses. But as far as tumas meis is concerned, with all of its requirements, we know that tumas meis entails a 7-day purification period and the sprinkling of paraduma water. That sets in only with actual soul departure. We continue at the top of Amud Beis. Before we get into the Gemara text itself, we have a topic heading, Dino shel Rav Chisda Amar Rav. Now, in Gemara itself, we've noted Rav with a firebox because this is an opinion that will carry us through till Daf Mem Daled, Amud Aleph, upper quarter of the page where the Mishnah appears. So we have one Shlita that's going to be the focus of our attention, hence the firebox marking. So his din states, Afapi, and we're reading on the side of the Gemara, Afapi shekayin hedyot muter l'tamei loviv, eino mitame loi im nechsar me'evarov. Even though a common Kohen upon the death of his father is allowed to defile himself, to participate in his funeral, to bury him, etc. Nevertheless, if that Kohen's father is missing part of his body, it's not a complete body, the Kohen is not allowed to defile to him, even though it's his father. The Gemara, top line of Amud Beis, Omar Rav Chisda Amar Rav, Niktal Roshoi Shel Oviv, Eino Mitamelo. If a Kohen's father, which is one of the 7 relatives that a Kohen is allowed to defile to, nevertheless, if his body is missing its head, it's nikta, it's cut off, the head is cut off, the Kohen is not allowed to mitame to the father. My taima, what is the basis of this? Omar Kro, the pasuk says li oviv. Bizman shu sholem, the Kohen is allowed to mitame li oviv, as is stated in the pasuk. That is only when he is complete. Below bizman shu chaser, and not when he is missing. We look at Rashi at the top. Omar Rav Chisda nikta rosh shalov avafapi sheharosh betzad haguf. Even if the head happens to be placed by the side of the body, hayu kfar nikta, since the head has been removed, eino mitame, the Kohen is not allowed to defile himself. The Omar Kro lenefesh lo yitame b'amov ki mushel korvelov liimo loaviv, and we darshan from that pasuk the word loaviv bizman shu shalem. Shalom nispardu evorav zemizeh, when he is complete, when the limbs have not separated one from the other. V'lo izman shu choser, kagon zeh shenikta rosho, and not allowed in a case like this where the head has been removed. Now, as we go on in the Gemara, you'll notice quite a few triangles appearing in alternating directions. Under our Mivneh heading, we indicate the triangles a ma'akav with the point facing upwards, kushis harav chizamarav, and the inverted triangle shuvos. And this marking scheme does continue till mem daled amud aleph. So we start with a question. Amalei Rav Hamnuna, elo me'ata. Well, if that be the case, Ka'ozil b'pakso da'arvis uposkua ganvi l'reishe. Father and son are walking along in an area. Name of a place is Paksa. It's a valley. Da'arvis. It's the name of a place where there happen to be lots of bandits, and they were attacked, and they decapitated the father's head. Are you going to say then that the son cannot bury his father? The son that is a Kohen. Are you going to say then that the son cannot defile himself to the father because it's a Kohen's father whose head is missing, is separated from the body? So he answers, Mace mitzvah karmas. Are you describing the case of the mace mitzvah? Well, Hashta yesh lomer b'achrinim achayev. A mace mitzvah is essentially, as the Gemara will explain a little bit later, essentially is a body that's found along the way that there is no one around to bury. If that be the case, a Kohen and a Nazir as well, even a Kohen Gadol, are allowed or required to take care of his burial. So what you're describing is father and son walking along in Pax of the Arvis, so it's a mace mitzvah. And what do we know about a mace mitzvah? Hashta yeshlomer bachrini mechayev. Mind you, a Kohen or a Nazir sees a stranger lying by the side of the road. Achrini meaning a non-relative. They are bound to bury them, which of course entails defiling to them. The aviv lo kol shekain. If it's the Kohen's father, all the more so, he has to take care of the body's burying. The Gemara asks, "V'hai mace mitzvah? Is this in fact a mace mitzvah case?" V'atanya ezu mace mitzvah. What is a mace mitzvah? Kol she'ein lo kovrim. Any body that there is no one to take care of its burial. Korei v'achirim oyenoisoi. If figuratively the body could call out and others would rush to its burial, ein zeh mace mitzvah. That's not an example of a mace mitzvah. V'ha is lei bra. And here you have the son that was walking along with his father. Now Tosfos adds very importantly that so what? There's the son. So the Tosfos says since there is the son there, he can go and hire others who will take care of the burial of this father whose head is separated. So in light of the fact that it's the son that was walking along with the father, the son is quite capable of going out and hiring others. The Gemara explains, not so. Kevan dekazil beurcha, since they were going on the road, kami she'ein lo kovrim domi. It's as if there are no other buriers, grave diggers that are around. It's a lone road, and just the son is there. He's not going to find anyone else to bury. So this is no less than a standard case of mace mitzvah, and because of that, the Kohen or the Nazir would be required to bury this individual, even though the head is separated from the body. So, on the grounds of mace mitzvah, yes, but not on the grounds of this being the Kohen's father. And as Rav said above, when the head is separated from the body or a limb is missing from the body, the Kohen's license to defile based on this being his relative is non-existent. Meisvei, the pasuk says, Lo Yitamo. And once again, this is a pasuk found in the context of the Kohen and relatives to whom he is allowed to mitame. And we darshan as follows: Lo hu mitame ve'eno mitame levoreo. When she is complete, the Kohen is allowed to mitame to his relative. When however a limb is separated, that's ve'eno mitame levoreo, means that if, let's say, a Kohen's sister had her arm amputated, so he cannot mitame, he can't bury the arm. Lefi she'eno mitame le'ever min achai shel aviv. This is let's say a function of the fact that a Kohen is not allowed to defile himself to a limb that was amputated from his father while alive. Avol machzirhu al etzem kisa'ira. That's the end of the source, as you can see. My machzirhu al etzem kisa'ira. What does that mean? Lav lemeimra te'i mechsar purta. Does it not mean that if the relative is missing a little bit, the Kohen is allowed to defile himself? And likewise to a Kohen whose father is missing and is not complete, the Kohen is allowed to defile himself. That's a problem for Rav Chisda's Omar Rav. Loi, it's not a problem for Rav Chisda Omar Rav. Hahi Reb Yehudahi. This source, the source we just read, that said that a person's entitled, a Kohen is entitled to defile himself to a relative though a part of the body is missing, that is a Tanaic opinion, a limited Tanaic opinion, and that of Rabbi Yehuda. The Sanya, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Lo Yitamo, V'eno Mitama Le'evoreha. Kohen is allowed to mitama to his relative when they are in their death, but not to defile themselves to one of the limbs. And the girsa of Rashi that we've written in between the lines, Lefi she'ein adam mitame al etzem kisa'ora me'aviv. A person is not allowed, a Kohen is not allowed to defile himself to a bone of his father. A bone that measures the size of a barley grain, which in general imparts tumas mesif upon mag or masa, touching it or carrying it, not ba'ohel, however. Avol hu chozer al etzem kisora me'aviv. So this is a teaching of Rav Yehuda, and it says avol hu chozer al etzem kisora me'aviv, and that is explained by Rashi that you have a situation where the body is almost complete, but a little bone is missing from it. So if the main body is intact, he's allowed to defile himself to the majority of the body that's there. And if a little piece is missing, he can even go and seek that out because he has defiled himself to the main body. So we see that Rabbi Yehuda enables a Kohen to defile himself to a relative, for example, to his father, even if a part is missing. But Rav Chisda Amar Rav, that we saw at the top of the page, said a law that is based on those that argue with Rabbi Yehuda, those that are more restrictive. The Gemara asks, V'hot Tanya Rav Kahana Rav Ozer ben Yaakov. Rav Kahana taught a brisa that was authored by Rav Ozer ben Yaakov that reads as follows: Lo Yitamo V'eno mitama le'evorim. A Kohen is allowed to mitama to her, to one of his close relatives, an unmarried sister, to his mother, that type of relative, one of the 7 relatives, but not to their limbs. Well, prat likazayas min hameis, this eina mitama le'evorim comes to the exclusion of an olive quantity of corpse flesh, ukazayas netzel, an olive quantity of corpse decomposition, umlo tarvid rekev, Mlo tarvet is a measure. It's a type of spoon, a spoonful of rekev, of decomposition. Yochol lo yitame l'shedra l'golgeles l'rov binyono l'rov minyona. Could it be that there's a tumah restriction even to the relative's complete spine or skull or majority, let's say, skeletal frame? Rov binyana is the two thigh bones and an arm bone, which taken into consideration constitutes the majority of a person's height. Or l'rov minyana, assuming that there are let's say 250 bones in a person's body, so 248 bones, so 125 would be the majority. So that's rov minyana, the majority of the number of bones. They're very small bones in the body as well. So is a kohen not allowed to metame to these situations, the spine or the skull or the majority of the height or the majority of the bones? Well, Kishu Omer v'yomarta alehem hoisif lo hakosuf tuma acheres. From the fact that these words appear in the pasuk dealing with the kohen, it allows an additional type of tuma, meaning even to these things. So not only to a body that's relatively complete, that's relatively whole, but even to these we call significant bones, the kohen is allowed to metame. We continue at the top of Mem Daled Amud Aleph. Yachol lo yitame l'shedra u'legolgos l'rov binyono u'lerov minyono shel achirim. Could it be that only to his sister, as the pasuk said when it says lo yitamo, that's a reference to his sister. Maybe it's only to his sister that he has this leniency of defilement, but not regarding the spine, skull, and majority of binyan and minyan of other relatives, the other 6 close relatives. The Gemara says, well, that's not so. Amris ma achoso miyuchedes shegufa tolui bo umetama l'shedra l'gogolis ulerov minyana. Just like when it comes to the sister, the person's body, her body is dependent on the spine, on the skull. These are the main parts of the body, and we see that the kohen is allowed to metame, to defile to his sisters, shedra, gugolas, etc. Afkol shegufo tolui bo, so to any of the other 6 close relatives, metame l'shedra, l'gugolas, u'lerov binyano, u'lerov minyano. We speak about the other relatives, of course, father is included. Well, what we have here is a question. This is all part of a question. Before, in order to defend Rav Chizrav, we said, well, this idea of a partially incomplete body is grounds for defilement. That's only Reb Yehuda. But here we see, it's not just Reb Yehuda. We see that Reb Elazar ben Yaakov says the same thing. So this becomes a problem once again for Rav Chisda Marav. The Gemara answers, Hahi nami Reb Yehuda hi. The teaching that Rebbe Elazar ben Yaakov cited was a teaching based on the opinion of Rebbe Yehuda. For Rav, the Omar ki hai tana. And Rav, who was quoted by Rav Chisda, Rav is following a different Tanaic opinion, Desanya. And here we'll see the basis for Rav's stringency, namely the prohibition of Tumah, even though you're dealing with a close relative, if the body is missing something. What does it say here? An incident involving the death of Rabbi Tzadok HaKohen's father. And Ginzak is the name of a place. They told Rabbi Tzadok about his father's demise 3 years later. The question was brought to Rabbi Yeshua and 4 additional sages. Can Rabbi Tzadok and the son, who's a Kohen, can he defile himself to the father to bring him from Ginzak to the family burial plot? The Omru, and they ruled La'aviv, quoting the pasuk La'aviv. Bizman shu shalem v'lo bizman shu chaser. Naturally, you can see how we've dashed, underlined, highlighted the main point. The entitlement of a Kohen to defile himself to his father or one of the other close relatives is only if they are complete, not if they are missing something. And a body, having been interred for 3 years, now they want to move it, you can rest assured it's not complete anymore. And therefore, Rabbi Tzadok, could not metame himself to it, and that is the basis for Rav's ruling. With that, we conclude our shiur for today.